Okay, so last weekend for work, I attended a conference on migrants. I work in a human rights NGO, and the conference was called The Gift and the Challenge of the Migrant and the Refugee on the Soul of Ireland. So you might guess from that title it was organised by a religious group. And as part of that conference, religion was identified as being very important for refugees, and something that's often left out of discussions about and during the asylum process. And during the day, I was involved in storytelling circles where you got to hear from people who had been refugees themselves about the process. And I was in a group with a Nigerian woman called Ada, who had come to Ireland, and she's now a citizen. But she spoke about how her religion really helped her, and how being part of a spiritual community helped give her confidence to reach out to others, and it really helped her feel at home in Ireland. And I was really struck by this, how having a spiritual community helped her to deal with the physical and emotional trauma of displacement. And though my story and hers are very, very different, I could really identify with this human longing to be part of a community, to belong and to find a home. So I guess I'm bringing this up because my first encounter with the Sangha was a kind of a coming home. My first meditation course, one of the things I was struck by the most was the people, not just leading the course, but on the course itself. There was just this atmosphere of friendliness. There was a sense that there was no agenda, that what I did didn't really matter. It was just who I was. And that helped me really feel at ease in myself and made me feel at home in myself. And at that time, I was training as a solicitor. And I was training in a commercial law firm where power and money was king. And it was quite a competitive environment. And asking questions was kind of frowned on. You were supposed to just learn by doing, but if you got it wrong, that was, unacceptable as well. So it was very difficult. I found it difficult. And I would go to the centre and do courses while I was still training. And I used to always change out of my work clothes when I was going to the centre. I'd have to wear this business suit for work. And I would always change into my regular clothes when I was going there. And there was something about the idea of turning up in the centre in my work clothes. I just felt like I didn't want to be the person I had to be at work in the centre. I felt I had to wear a costume at work, but I could just be myself in the centre. And similarly, on my first retreat, I went on a week retreat after Christmas. And again, I was just really struck by how natural it was, the way we lived together. There was, you had these lovely, meaningful conversations with people, but you could also just be in silence with them. We're doing really simple things like washing the dishes together and cooking together. And then on the other hand, having sort of some kind of crazy rituals and doing lots of meditation together. And it just felt really deeply meaningful. And it was such a contrast for me to being at work. Such a different way of being with people. And I always have such a strong memory of coming back from that retreat and standing in Westmoreland Street in the Dublin city centre. And it was a dark, wet January evening. And the Christmas lights were still up, which just felt really surreal. And I remember thinking, there's no going back. Something new has emerged in my life. There's a new way of being, and I really want to be part of this. And it was really, really exciting, actually. And to my surprise, the following day when I was back at the office, I was the happiest person there. And I think no one could understand because the Christmas holidays were over. So Sangha has been a really important part of my spiritual practice. I came across Buddhism when I was 16 on the internet, the old dial-up internet. But I didn't think I could practice it on my own. I didn't think there was anyone in Ireland actually a Buddhist. Little did I know. So I just didn't think about it. But then speed forward to now. I'm not going to tell you how many more years that is. I've been living in a community for almost 5 years, and I've been in various different women's study groups, and both of these things have given me a really strong sense of Sangha, spiritual community, but also of spiritual friendship. But I have to say that my ordination retreat earlier this year has been the most positive experience I've had of Sangha. So I got ordained earlier this year in Adhisthana, a women's ordination retreat centre in Spain, along with 3 other women who are here. Well, more than 3 other women, but there's 3 women here, Akasa Jyoti, Sadayasihi, and Dana Yuta. And it was just an amazing experience. I really felt like I was soaking in positivity for the time I was there. It's not that I didn't experience any difficulty, but any difficulty I experienced just felt like it was held in this atmosphere of positivity that wasn't actually of my own creation. It was just this, I felt like other people's practice was supporting me at times. And there was a really sense of an active force of metta. And I experienced this personally myself. At the beginning of the retreat, I had developed a rash on my hands. And because we were up a mountain, I thought, well, there's nothing I can do. I can't pop down to a shop here. So I didn't really think anything of it. But one of the women noticed, and next thing I knew, I was inundated with hand lotions and antihistamine creams, and even a pair of rubber gloves that I could use when I was washing the dishes. And it was just really touching the way people responded. People responded without me even asking them to. So I really appreciated the sense of harmony that was there, that was present on our ordination retreat. And it really felt like we were a family in the best sense of the word. Not the kind of Walton's family, a real family. One of the women said to me rather memorably when we were having our usual post-dinner fruit session, as the fruit was so delicious in Spain, someone had peeled an orange and was just passing it around, and one of the women said, "Oh, this is the life. An orange is so much nicer when it's shared." And to me that really captured the kind of atmosphere that we had there. So Sangha, it can be a garden in the wilderness, as we've heard yesterday. But also, to just mix a few metaphors, sometimes it's not always rosy in the garden. So we speak of going for refuge to the 3 jewels, of which the Sangha is one. But what is the Sangha? And according to Sangharakshita in his book, What is the Sangha? He says, it is a group of developing individuals who have the purpose not of becoming a powerful organization, but of furthering the development of the individual towards the goal of liberation for the sake of all beings. So he's very clear, it's not an institution, but individuals who are trying to promote spiritual growth. And I think for me, one of the biggest dangers about talking about going for refuge to the Sangha is the danger of going for refuge to certain people. And that's why I'm really glad there's a few people who've travelled over to this retreat from Dublin. It's something myself, Casey and Kevin, who are the facilitators in Dublin, have spoken about a few times, that, wonderful and all as we are, we can't give a whole sense of the diversity of the Sangha. But of course, now that we're here and we've managed to convince a few people to come with us, it feels like the Sangha is more than just the people here in this room as well. It's the Sangha throughout the ages, the spiritual community throughout the ages, but it's also individuals anywhere who support spiritual growth. And I think it's really important to have this mythic sense of what the Sangha is, and to not fix it to certain people. Because what happens, I think, when you do that is that often things like betrayal and disappointment happen. And this has certainly been my experience. And around this time last year, the community I was living in, one of the women moved out quite abruptly. And she didn't move out. We weren't in harmony when she moved out. And it was really quite upsetting. I felt let down. I felt let down by her, but I also felt let down by our failure of our ideals, is what I felt. It felt like if you can't work it out here, well, what chance is there in the world? And it's something I've had to work with for quite a while, to kind of reflecting on that. But over the months since then, it's really given me a chance to reflect on what Sangha really is, and to see my fixed views around what Sangha is. And also, it's really given me a chance to look at what compassion is. And for me, it's been a real working ground to see that even when a situation seems hopeless, that it's really important to keep the door open, to not shut the door on anyone. And to me, I suppose that's one of the things that we can do as a Sangha, is to just never shut the door on anyone, even when it seems like there's no point keeping it open. And the American psychologist James Hillman speaks about betrayal being necessary for maturation. So I would encourage you, if you do find yourself in the Sangha experiencing that feeling of betrayal, to maybe use it as an opportunity to reflect on what your views are around the Sangha, what you were expecting. And to me, Sangha is so precious, and it's precious, it's an incentive enough for me to work at looking at my views, to step out of my comfort zone, because I think it's so very important. So Sangha can really test where your practice is at. Well, other people can really test where your practice is at. But Sangha in action can really animate this whole concept of the core Buddhist teaching, that of praticca samutpada, which is conditioned co-production. And praticca samutpada says that everything arises and ceases in dependence on conditions. Or in other words, what you do or do not do matters, but that your actions or inactions are still just one part of the overall picture. So you could say that you don't live in a vacuum. So on my welcoming back night in Dublin, when I came back from my ordination retreat, I was asked to give a talk. So I thought about it quite a lot, and then I wrote out a talk, and then I rehearsed it, and I rehearsed it, and I rehearsed it, and I kept rehearsing it, and I rehearsed it so much that I was really bored of it. And I remember thinking, oh dear, this is going to go down well if I feel bored already. But when I was finally standing in front of the audience, there was something about the kindness there, and how everyone felt like they were really, really listening to what I had to say, that it felt like they just drew out what I had to say out of me. And I always remember this moment at the end of the talk. We were just, after I'd stopped talking, I was just beaming down at them, and they were beaming back up at me. And it was just so lovely. And I remember thinking that the experience of happiness I was having, I wasn't sure if it was my own or whether it was theirs or whose it was. It was just really lovely. And I think that Sangha can really help show that there's such a fine line between I and you. And you can see this over and over in our interactions with each other. So there's an Irish expression, Scott Acela a Warren Nadini, which means we live in each other's shelter. And I think this really alludes to how we are so interconnected and how we are the conditions for each other's lives. And likewise for me, the image of the 1,000-armed Avalokiteshvara, it just really evokes that we can respond better to the world when we respond together. And I just think of the encouragement I received on my ordination retreat from the women there. I learned so much from the women there. They really helped me go beyond myself and do things I wouldn't have thought I would do, like giving acting a go, changing gas bottles despite my unscientific fears around gas. And even I got a chance to write a poem in iambic pentameter, which with the help of someone. So just really great, really such a support. And I feel such gratitude. I feel such gratitude for my time there. And there's a quote from Arundhati Roy. She says, another world is possible. Another world is not only possible, she is on her way. And I feel like I was living in that other world for 3 months. And I feel really lucky to have been living there. And I would really like to bring that back into this world, the real world, with the help of my spiritual friends. So I'm excited about the future of the Sangha. And recently in Dublin we had a celebration of Ambedkar. And I found that really inspiring. I was really inspired by his vision of the Dharma and what it can offer, not just the untouchables, not just India, but the whole world. I really like that, dreaming big. And at the moment there are plans in Dublin, we're exploring setting up a team-based right livelihood. And hopefully that will address the deficit that Vidyaruchi mentioned yesterday. But in the world at the moment, we're living in an extraordinary, complex and challenging time. There are things like the refugee crisis, climate change, growing economic inequality, and we really need a vision based on metta, on ethics, and of seeing how things really are. But we also need a group of individuals who can exemplify this and who are willing to exemplify this. So in the last few days of my ordination retreat, we had this world news orientation to prepare us for going back to the world. And at the time in July, the big news was Brexit. But it wasn't just Brexit, there was stuff about Donald Trump and floods and fires and disasters happening around the world. And it was quite a shock actually to the system to hear all of these things were happening while we were up this mountain really living in harmony together. And one of the team said, Amrita Mati, she really encouraged us to see that what we were doing was so different and was so precious and important, and that it was something that we could bring back into our lives. And I just felt like that's really true. The world really does need people who want to live from awareness and kindness. The world really needs people who can see how an orange shared with their brothers and sisters just tastes so much sweeter. And the world really, really needs Sangha. So that's it.